The morning sun cast long shadows across the cobblestones of the royal palace courtyard as Guard Captain Marcus Wellington adjusted his ceremonial red jacket for the 100th time that day. The golden buttons gleamed in the sunlight, each one polished to perfection according to the strict standards of the Royal Guard. His tall black hat sat perfectly straight on his head, and his white gloves were spotless. Today was the Queen's birthday celebration, and thousands of visitors would pass through the palace gates. Marcus had been serving as a royal guard for 12 years. He knew every rule, every protocol, every procedure by heart. Guards were not to move from their posts. Guards were not to speak unless spoken to by royalty. Guards were not to break formation under any circumstances. These rules had been drilled into him since his first day of training, and he had never once broken them. The palace grounds buzzed with excitement as families arrived for the public celebration. Children pressed their faces against the iron gates, wide-eyed at the grandeur before them. Parents pointed out the famous red-coated guards, explaining to their little ones about the important job these soldiers had protecting the royal family. Marcus stood perfectly still at his post near the main entrance, his eyes scanning the crowd with practiced precision. As the day progressed, the crowds grew larger and more excited. Street performers entertained families in the courtyard, their music mixing with the laughter of children and the chatter of tourists. Food vendors sold traditional treats, filling the air with the sweet smell of candied apples and roasted nuts. The atmosphere was festive and joyful, exactly what the Queen had hoped for on her special day. Marcus watched it all from his position, maintaining his stoic expression even as he observed the happiness around him. A group of schoolchildren walked by, their teacher pointing out the different architectural features of the palace. An elderly couple sat on a nearby bench sharing stories about their own visit to the palace 50 years ago, on their honeymoon. Young couples took photographs in front of the impressive stone facade, capturing memories that would last a lifetime. The guard captain had seen thousands of such celebrations over his career. Each one brought its own unique moments and memories, though he was trained to observe rather than participate. His duty was clear and unwavering. He was there to protect, to watch, and to maintain the dignity and security of the royal residence. Personal feelings and impulses had no place in his role as a royal guard. As the afternoon approached, Marcus noticed the crowds beginning to shift and move in different patterns. Some families were heading toward the palace gardens for the scheduled tour, while others gathered near the main stage where a children's choir was preparing to perform. The organized chaos of a large public event was something he had grown accustomed to over the years. Among the sea of faces, Marcus spotted families from all walks of life. There were wealthy tourists with expensive cameras, local families enjoying a free day out, school groups on educational trips, and elderly visitors who had traveled from far away just to catch a glimpse of royal history. The diversity of the crowd always amazed him, though he never let this wonder show on his face. The protocols were clear about crowd control and security procedures. Each guard had specific responsibilities and areas to monitor. Communication between guards happened through subtle hand signals and predetermined movements. Everything was choreographed to appear effortless while maintaining the highest level of security and ceremonial dignity. As Marcus continued his vigilant watch, he had no idea that this day would be different from all the others. In just a few hours, he would face a situation that would test everything he believed about duty, protocol, and what it truly meant to serve others. The seeds of an extraordinary moment were already being planted in the ordinary afternoon festivities surrounding him. The afternoon sun had shifted, creating new patterns of light and shadow across the palace courtyard when Marcus first noticed her. A small girl, no more than 5 years old, stood alone near the ornate fountain at the center of the square. Her bright yellow dress made her easy to spot among the crowd, but what caught Marcus's attention was not her clothing. It was the look of confusion and growing panic on her tiny face. The little girl turned in slow circles, her dark curls bouncing as she searched the faces around her. Her small hands clutched a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days, its brown fur worn smooth from countless hugs. Marcus could see her lips moving, though he couldn't hear her words over the noise of the celebration. She was calling for someone, most likely her mother. From his position at the main entrance, Marcus watched as several adults walked past the child without noticing her distress. The crowd was thick and people were focused on their own families and activities. A juggler nearby had drawn a large audience, and a balloon seller was doing brisk business just a few feet away. In all the excitement and movement, one small frightened child could easily be overlooked. The girl's movements became more frantic. She began walking in wider circles, standing on her tiptoes to try to see over the legs and bodies of the adults around her. Marcus could see tears beginning to form in her eyes, though she was trying to be brave. She hugged her stuffed rabbit tighter and continued searching, her small voice growing more desperate with each passing moment. Marcus felt something stir inside his chest, a feeling he had trained himself to suppress during his years of service. It was the natural human instinct to help someone in need, especially a child. But his training was strong. Guards do not leave their posts. Guards do not interfere with civilian matters unless specifically ordered to do so. Guards maintain their position and follow protocol at all times. The little girl stumbled slightly as someone accidentally bumped into her while rushing to catch up with their group. She nearly fell but managed to steady herself, though the near miss only added to her fear. Marcus watched as she pressed herself against the base of the fountain, trying to make herself smaller as the crowd continued to flow around her like water around a stone. Several more minutes passed, and the situation was becoming more serious. The child was now crying openly, though she tried to muffle her sobs against her stuffed rabbit. Marcus scanned the crowd looking for anyone who might be searching for a missing child. He saw parents with their own children, couples enjoying the day, and tour groups following their guides. But no one seemed to be looking for the little girl in the yellow, dressed the guard captains. Training told him to remain at his post and perhaps signal to one of the civilian security personnel to handle the situation. There were proper channels for these kinds of incidents. There were protocols in place. His role was not to leave his position for any reason, no matter how compelling the circumstances might seem. But as Marcus watched the little girl's shoulders shake with quiet sobs, he found himself remembering his own childhood. He thought about his younger sister, who had gotten lost at a fair when they were children. He remembered the terror on her face and the frantic search that followed. He remembered how a kind stranger had helped reunite them with their parents, and how grateful his family had been for that simple act of human kindness. The internal conflict grew stronger with each passing second. On one side stood years of military discipline, training, and unwavering commitment to duty. On the other side stood a frightened child who needed help that might not come from anywhere else. Marcus had never faced such a direct challenge to his sense of duty versus his basic human compassion. The celebration continued around them, oblivious to the small drama unfolding near the fountain. The royal protocols remained unchanged, carved in stone like the palace walls themselves. But something was shifting inside Marcus Wellington, something that would soon force him to make the most difficult decision of his military career. The decision came suddenly like a dam breaking after holding back water for too long. Marcus took one last look around to ensure no immediate security threats existed, then made a choice that went against every fiber of his training. He stepped away from his post and walked toward the frightened little girl. As he approached, his heavy black boots clicked against the cobblestones, and several people in the crowd turned to stare. It was unusual to see a royal guard moving through the civilian area during a public event. Some tourists quickly pulled out their cameras, thinking they were witnessing some kind of ceremonial procession. Others simply watched with curiosity, wondering what could be important enough to draw a guard away from his formal duties. The little girl looked up as Marcus's shadow fell across her. Her tear-streaked face showed a mixture of fear and hope as she gazed up at the tall soldier in his impressive red uniform. Marcus realized he had never spoken to a child while in uniform before. His usual interactions were limited to brief, formal exchanges with adults or other military personnel. Slowly, Marcus knelt down on one knee, bringing himself closer to the child's eye level. The movement was careful and deliberate, designed not to frighten her further. His voice, when he spoke, was much gentler than the commanding tone he used with his fellow guards. "Hello, little one," Marcus said softly. "My name is Captain Marcus. What's your name?" The girl wiped her nose with the back of her small hand and looked at him with wide, uncertain eyes. "Emma," she whispered, barely loud enough to hear over the surrounding noise. "That's a beautiful name, Emma," Marcus replied, offering her a small smile. "And who is this?" He nodded toward the worn stuffed rabbit she clutched so tightly. "This is Mr. Bunny," Emma said, holding up the toy with slightly more confidence. "He's my best friend." Marcus nodded seriously as if meeting Mr. Bunny was a matter of great importance. It's very nice to meet you both. Now, Emma, can you tell me about your mummy? When did you last see her? Emma's lower lip began to tremble again as she remembered her situation. We were looking at the pretty flowers in the garden. Mummy was talking to another lady about the roses. I saw a butterfly and followed it, and when I turned around, Mummy wasn't there anymore. I've been looking everywhere, but there are so many people, and I'm too small to see over them. Marcus felt his heart tighten as he listened to her story. He could picture the scene perfectly. A curious child distracted by something beautiful, wandering just far enough away to become separated from her parent in a crowd of thousands. It was the kind of innocent mistake that could happen to anyone, but the consequences for a small child could be terrifying. That must have been a very pretty butterfly, Marcus said, keeping his voice calm and reassuring. Can you tell me what your mummy looks like? That way Mr. Bunny and I can help you find her. Emma's face brightened slightly at the prospect of help. She has brown hair like mine but longer. She's wearing a blue dress with white flowers on it. And she has a big brown purse that she always carries. She smells like the perfume she puts on in the mornings, the one that smells like flowers. As Emma described her mother, Marcus was already forming a plan in his mind. He knew he was breaking multiple regulations by leaving his post and involving himself in a civilian matter. If his commanding officer discovered what he was doing, there would likely be serious consequences. But looking at Emma's hopeful face, he found that he didn't care about the potential punishment. Around them, the celebration continued. The children's choir had begun their performance on the main stage, their sweet voices carrying across the courtyard. Families gathered to listen, applauding enthusiastically after each song. Food vendors continued to serve traditional treats, and the general atmosphere remained festive and joyful. But for Marcus, the entire world had narrowed down to one frightened little girl and her urgent need to find her mother. Protocol and procedure seemed less important than basic human kindness. For the first time in his 12-year career, he was about to discover what it meant to put compassion before regulations. Don't worry, Emma, Marcus said, standing up and extending his hand to her. We're going to find your mummy. Will you come with me and Mr. Bunny to look for her? Emma nodded eagerly and placed her small hand in his much larger one. Together, they began walking toward the palace gardens, leaving behind the safety and certainty of established protocol for the uncertain but necessary path of doing what felt right. The search began in the palace gardens where Emma remembered last seeing her mother. Marcus held the little girl's hand firmly but gently as they walked along the gravel paths between carefully maintained flower beds. The formal gardens were crowded with visitors admiring the roses, tulips, and other seasonal blooms that the royal gardeners had cultivated to perfection. Emma walked beside Marcus with renewed hope, though her small legs had to work hard to keep up with his longer stride. He slowed his pace to match hers, something that felt strange after years of military precision and timing. Every few steps Emma would stop and stand on her tiptoes, scanning the crowd for any sign of her mother's blue dress with white flowers. She was right over there, Emma said, pointing toward a section of the garden where several people were gathered around a particularly impressive rose bush. There were lots of red roses, and Mummy was talking to a nice lady with gray hair about how pretty they were. Marcus guided Emma toward the area she had indicated. As they walked, he found himself seeing the gardens through different eyes. Usually, when he patrolled these grounds during official events, he focused on security concerns and potential threats. Now he noticed the way the afternoon sunlight made the flowers glow, and how the fountain in the center of the garden created a peaceful sound that seemed to calm Emma's nerves. They searched systematically through each section of the garden. Marcus asked several visitors if they had seen a woman in a blue dress with white flowers, describing her as Emma had. Some people were helpful, offering suggestions about where they might look next. Others barely paused in their sightseeing to listen to his questions. A few seemed surprised to see a royal guard engaging with civilians in such an informal manner. As they moved through the gardens, Emma chattered nervously about her mother. She told Marcus about their morning, how excited she had been to visit the palace, and how her mother had promised they would see the Queen's horses in the royal stables later in the day. She talked about Mr. Bunny's adventures, how he had traveled with her family on vacation last summer, and how he always helped her feel brave when she was scared. Marcus listened to every word, responding with genuine interest and encouragement. He had never spent time with a child in this way, and he was surprised by how much he enjoyed Emma's innocent observations about the world around them. Her perspective was refreshing after years of adult concerns and military formality. After searching the main garden area without success, Marcus began to expand their search. He led Emma toward the wider palace grounds, thinking that her mother might have moved to other areas while looking for her daughter. They checked near the main stage where the children's choir was still performing, and around the food vendors where families often gathered. The afternoon was progressing and Marcus was becoming more concerned. He knew that Emma's mother was probably searching frantically for her daughter, growing more worried with each passing minute. He also knew that his absence from his post had likely been noticed by now, and that explanations would be required later. But these concerns seemed less important than finding a solution to Emma's immediate problem. Emma was beginning to tire from all the walking. Her initial excitement about having a royal guard help her find her mother was giving way to renewed worry. She hugged Mr. Bunny more tightly and asked Marcus several times if they would really find her mummy. Each time he assured her that they would keep looking until they were successful. "Captain Marcus," Emma said as they paused near another fountain, "what if we can't find her? What if she went home without me?" Marcus knelt down beside her again, looking directly into her worried eyes. "Emma, I want you to listen to me carefully. Your mummy would never ever go home without you. Right now she is looking for you just as hard as we are looking for her. Mummies and daddies never stop looking when their children need them. We just have to be patient and keep searching until we find each other." Emma nodded solemnly, seeming to draw strength from his confident words. She straightened her shoulders and prepared to continue the search, but Marcus could see that she was getting tired and overwhelmed by the size of the crowds around them. It was then that Marcus had an idea. He thought about the resources available to him as a royal guard, resources that he had never considered using for a situation like this. The palace had communication systems, security networks, and personnel stationed throughout the grounds. Perhaps it was time to use his position, not just to break protocol, but to bend it in service of something more important than regulations. Marcus made a decision that would take his protocol violations to an entirely new level. He reached for his radio, the same communication device he used for official guard duties, and prepared to use it for something completely unauthorized. Emma watched with wide eyes as he pressed the button and spoke into the device with his usual commanding tone. "This is Captain Wellington requesting assistance with a civilian matter," he said into the radio. "I need all available personnel to be on the lookout for a woman, approximately 30 years old, brown hair, wearing a blue dress with white flowers, carrying a large brown purse. She is likely searching for her missing daughter and may appear distressed." The radio crackled with responses from other guards stationed around the palace grounds. Marcus had worked with these men and women for years, and despite the unusual nature of his request, they responded professionally and without question. Within minutes, he had created an unofficial search network spanning the entire palace complex. Emma listened to the radio chatter with fascination. "Are all those people going to help us find Mummy?" she asked, her voice filled with amazement. "Yes, they are," Marcus replied, feeling a sense of satisfaction at being able to mobilize resources for such an important cause. These are good people who want to help children find their families. As they continued their search with the support of the radio network, Marcus began to notice something interesting happening around them. Other visitors to the palace had observed what was taking place and had begun to help as well. A family from Scotland stopped to ask if they could assist in the search. An elderly gentleman offered to check the areas that might be difficult for Marcus and Emma to reach. A group of teenagers spread out to cover more ground efficiently. The search had become a community effort, with dozens of people now actively looking for Emma's mother. Marcus was moved by the spontaneous kindness of strangers who took time from their own palace visit to help a frightened child. It reminded him of something he had forgotten during his years of formal military service, that most people, when given the opportunity, genuinely want to help others in need. Emma was becoming more animated as she saw so many people working to reunite her with her mother. She walked with renewed energy, pointing out areas where she thought her mother might be and thanking everyone who offered to help. Her natural friendliness and innocent charm seemed to inspire the volunteers to search even harder. Then, just as Marcus was beginning to worry about how long the search might take, His radio crackled with an excited voice. "Captain Wellington, this is Guard Peterson at the main information booth. I have a woman here matching your description. She's been asking about a missing child named Emma, wearing a yellow dress." Marcus felt a surge of relief and excitement. "We're on our way," he responded immediately. He looked down at Emma, who had heard the radio message and was already jumping up and down with joy. "Is that really my mummy?" Emma asked, barely able to contain her excitement. "It sounds like it might be," Marcus replied, though he tried to remain cautious until they could confirm it was indeed the right person. "Let's go see." They made their way quickly toward the main information booth located near the palace entrance. Emma practically skipped alongside Marcus, chattering excitedly about seeing her mother again and telling her about all the kind people who had helped in the search. Her transformation from the frightened, crying child he had first encountered to this excited, happy little girl was remarkable to witness. As they approached the information booth, Marcus could see a woman pacing back and forth in front of the counter. She had brown hair and was wearing a blue dress with white flowers, exactly as Emma had described. Even from a distance, he could see the worry and stress on her face as she spoke urgently with the guard at the information desk. Emma saw her mother at the same moment and let out a cry of pure joy. "Mummy, Mummy!" she called out, letting go of Marcus's hand and running as fast as her little legs could carry her across the remaining distance. The woman turned at the sound of her daughter's voice, and her face transformed from worry to overwhelming relief and happiness. She dropped to her knees and caught Emma in a fierce hug, holding her tightly as both of them cried tears of joy and relief. Marcus stood back and watched the reunion, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction that made all his protocol violations seem worthwhile. This was why he had become a soldier in the first place, to protect and serve others, to make a difference in people's lives. Sometimes he realized the most important service had nothing to do with official duties or regulations. After several minutes of emotional reunion, Emma's mother finally looked up through her tears to see Marcus standing nearby. She gently took her daughter's hand and walked over to him, her eyes filled with gratitude that needed no words to express its depth. "Thank you," she said simply, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you so much for helping my little girl. I was so scared and I didn't know what to do. The palace is so big and there are so many people. I thought I might never find her." Marcus removed his ceremonial hat, a gesture of respect he had never made during his official duties. "It was my pleasure, ma'am. Emma is a very brave little girl and she helped by remembering exactly where she last saw you and describing what you looked like." Emma beamed with pride at being called brave. She held up Mr. Bunny for her mother to see. "Mummy, Captain Marcus helped me and Mr. Bunny search everywhere for you. And then he used his special radio to ask all the other guards to help too. Lots of people were looking for you." The mother knelt down and listened as Emma excitedly recounted their adventure. She described walking through the gardens with Marcus, meeting all the kind people who offered to help, and hearing the radio messages from the other guards. Her fear had been completely replaced by excitement about her unexpected adventure with a real royal guard. As Emma told her story, a small crowd had gathered around them. The other visitors who had helped in the search came over to witness the happy reunion. There were smiles and tears from strangers who had invested their time and energy in bringing this family back together. The spontaneous community that had formed around the search was celebrating its success. Marcus began to hear familiar voices in the crowd and turned to see several of his fellow guards approaching. His stomach tightened as he realized that his commanding officer, Colonel Richards, was among them. The colonel's expression was unreadable as he surveyed the scene. His captain surrounded by civilians, clearly having abandoned his post for an extended period. "Captain Wellington," Colonel Richards said in his formal military voice, "I believe we need to discuss your activities this afternoon." Before Marcus could respond, Emma's mother stepped forward. "Excuse me, sir, but are you this gentleman's supervisor?" she asked, her voice gaining strength as she prepared to defend the man who had helped her family. "I am Colonel Richards." "Yes," the colonel replied, somewhat surprised by the civilian's direct approach. "Then I need you to know that Captain Marcus saved my daughter today," Emma's mother said firmly. She was lost and frightened, and instead of ignoring her like he could have, he chose to help. He left his duties to search for me, and he organized other guards to help as well. Because of his kindness and his willingness to do the right thing, my daughter is safe, and our family is together again. Emma nodded enthusiastically and stepped forward with Mr. Bunny still in her arms. "Captain Marcus is a hero," she declared in her clear 5-year-old voice. "He was the bravest, kindest guard in the whole palace, and he helped me when I was scared." Colonel Richards looked down at the little girl, then at her grateful mother, then at Marcus. The crowd of civilians who had participated in the search was watching expectantly, waiting to see how the military would respond to their captain's actions. The colonel was faced with a choice between rigid adherence to protocol and recognition of exceptional human compassion. After a long moment, Colonel Richards smiled, something his subordinates rarely saw during official duties. "Captain Wellington," he said, "it appears you have distinguished yourself and the Royal Guard through your service to this family. While we will need to discuss proper procedures for handling such situations in the future, I commend you for your decision to help someone in need." The crowd broke into spontaneous applause, and Emma clapped her hands with delight. Marcus felt a weight lift from his shoulders as he realized that his actions would not result in punishment, but recognition. Emma's mother reached into her large brown purse and pulled out her phone. "Would it be possible to take a photograph?" she asked. "I want Emma to always remember the kind guard who helped her when she needed it most." Marcus looked to his colonel, who nodded approval. They arranged themselves for the photo, Marcus in his formal red uniform, Emma holding Mr. Bunny and her mother with her arm around both of them. It was a picture that would become treasured not just by Emma's family, but by Marcus as well, as a reminder of the day he learned that sometimes the most important protocols are the unwritten, ones that tell us to help each other when help is needed. As the celebration crowd began to disperse and Emma's family prepared to continue their palace visit, Marcus returned to his duties with a new understanding of what it truly meant to serve others. He had discovered that being a royal guard was not just about following orders and maintaining positions, but about protecting and caring for all people, especially those who needed help the most. Years later, Emma would still remember the day a brave guard in a red uniform helped her find her mother, and Marcus would remember it as the day he found something even more valuable than perfect protocol: the courage to follow his heart when it mattered most.